Greetings, poetry students. I hope you're doing well, staying safe, and all healthy. Really weird times, isn't it? Very strange, surreal, but I'm hoping that your studies are at least some kind of distraction and something to apply your brain to while we're going through this isolation period. Anyway, last week I sent out 4 videos. I didn't mean for it to be that many. It's just that it took that amount of videos to get through the material. It happened to be the most technical week for poetry, and I needed that space to cover the material. If you need to watch those again before doing your paper, I encourage you to do so. Today's video is not going to be that long or that in-depth. Neither of the videos actually that I'm going to be sending you this week are going to be that in-depth. This one, the first one, is pre-paper. Okay, so your task this week is to write the second paper in which you pick a poem in the book, one that we have not covered in class, that's not on the syllabus. You can refer to the sections I've outlined in the syllabus. However, as long as it's not something that we've covered in class or that I've explicated in class, I think it'll be safe for you to do so. Any poem of your choice, ancient, modern, contemporary, written by American, British, in translation, anything in the book, a poem in the book. So these are the guidelines for the paper. The first guideline is to maybe go by the syllabus, all of the ways in which we broke down poetry. So let me remind you of that. First of all, we have a theme and tone. Those are the first two elements that we went over. So go through your poem, and in your opinion, or in the way it speaks to you, isolate some themes that you can see and point it out. Tell me how you got there with the text. Also, tone. Remember, that is usually implicated by language, sometimes symbol, so this ties in with the other sections. Then we have the situation of the poem, what's going on, what's happening in the poem. Thirdly, language. Maybe look at some key terms, some phrases. Is the poet using any language devices that we went over? And I've given you lists of definitions. Lastly, rhyme and meter. This has to do with the last section from last week. And we did an earlier section on rhyme too. Firstly, at the very beginning of your paper, I want you to print the poem. All right, so the first thing I should see on your paper before you start your 3 to 4 page explication is a printout of the poem. If it's a really, really long poem, then maybe just print out the first couple of verses. But if it's a short enough poem, print out the whole thing. Then I want you to write in the rhyme scheme. You know what I mean? A, B, C, D, C, D. If it's a rhyme poem, it'll have a pattern. If it's a non-rhymed poem, of course, it'll just be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I want you to do it anyway to demonstrate that you understand the concept. Then I want you to do a metric scansion and watch the last video over again, 2 videos over again, if you need to remind yourself of that. Basically mark the stressed and unstressed syllables, divide it into feet, and see if you can figure out if your poem has a prevailing meter. If it conforms to a meter most of the time, then it has a prevailing meter. If you've picked a non-metrical poem, I still want you to do it anyway, just to demonstrate that you know how to mark the stressed and non-stressed syllables and to put in feet. Try to do it at least for a couple of 3 lines, just to show me that you're able to do it. So that's the first thing I want you to see on your paper, is the poem itself, a rhyme scheme penciled in, and then a section of the poem with a metric scansion, and see if you can identify what the meter is and write it by the poem somewhere. When you get to your actual explication or analysis, something I think is going to help you a lot is the useful terms handout that I sent last week. So if you turn to that again, you'll see the first section has to do with language. So we have alliteration, assonance, end rhyme, and gem, and those kinds of things. If you can find those in your poem, identify them in your paper. And then the second one has to do with rhythm. The third one has to do with imagery and figure of speech. And then the last one has to do with forms. So, of course, your poem's not going to have all these elements in. You're only responsible for what is in your actual poem. So if you don't have any onomatopoeia in your poem, then I don't expect you to talk about it in your paper. If you don't have any assonance, or if you don't have, if your poem's not a sonnet, then of course you don't have to cover that in your paper. So try and identify what is in your poem and include it in your analysis. Try to use as many of the terms as you can from that sheet. Even if you do a poem that is non-rhyming or doesn't have a meter, is a free verse type poem, I still want you to do a paragraph on rhyme and meter. Even if it's just saying the poem doesn't appear to have rhyme. You know, I checked the rhyme scheme and it's, you know, basically a non-rhyming poem. I did a scansion and the poem doesn't appear to have a meter. Even if your paragraph just makes those observations, I still want you to include it in the paper. Remember to also have, it's a good idea to have a paragraph for all these elements. So have a paragraph for rhyme, have a paragraph for meter, have a paragraph for tone, for language, and also for symbol or figures of speech. And meaning, you know, obviously I want to know what you think the poem means in your own analysis. So basically that's it, and that's how I'm going to grade the poem. I'm going to break it down into sections and give you, say, 20 points for rhyme and meter, 20 points for language and tone, 20 points for figures of speech. Of course, I'm going to grade on your citation, so make sure if you make points about the poem, you include quotes or citations from the poem to illustrate your points. And lastly, of course, writing and grammar. Try to get the paper as clean as you can. So remember to proofread and get the errors out and try to get it as perfect as you can. So your task this week is simply to write a paper on a poem. You have till the weekend to do that, so make that your task this week. I'm going to put out a second video, but I want you to watch that after you've written the poem and are ready to send it, and that's going to be our interaction about the poems that we chose, and I'll have you make comments in the YouTube comment section, and we'll try to simulate what we did in class. It won't be quite the same, but I want to have some kind of shared experience. So after watching this video, get out your useful terms to remember sheet, pick a poem, and start to write this paper. Remember to include all the elements that we went through. And then when you finish the paper and you're ready to send it, or later in the week, watch the second video and complete the commentary that I'm asking you to do in the comments section. And that's basically this week's classes. And then next week we're going to start on drama. It's going to move fast. I usually spend a whole class just to talk about drama in general. I don't have that luxury now, so we're going to take next week to do a whole play, not a long play, Oedipus Rex. So next week will be, the videos will cover the entirety of the play. So try to, throughout the week, read that play, and I'll send you a film version to watch as well. So this is the pre-paper writing video. The next video that you see on the links that I'm going to send you is to be watched after you've done your paper and you have it in front of you, and you can make comments and we can share them together. Have a great week. I look forward to reading your poetry papers. Okay, take care.